Got it. In the absence of our chairman, Jonathan, someone appointed me vice chair, and I thought that was a great position until right at this moment now. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do the Pledge of Allegiance and then the agenda. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item is a review of minutes. Do we have any of those, or I'm sure I read them, but
No, we don't have any this time.
so we will continue to the item on the agenda, the big item, which I think was on the front page of the Lincoln County News. I guess I'll have to thank them. Before the meeting started, I said to Isabel, I'm very impressed that so many people came to, meet and greet her, and only the second meeting in her tenure here, but so we'll assume that it's happened. And the hospital is on the agenda, and Isabel will give us an overview of what's going on.
Yeah, I do have a brief presentation to put on the screen, which I'll do now. As was mentioned, this is a sketch plan review or a conceptual plan review for applicant Clippership Landing Development LLC. Sketch plan review is basically to allow the applicants the opportunity to present their project to the planning board, receive sort of preliminary non-binding feedback, and generally get a sense of the board's feelings on this project in relation to the relevant review standards. This project will amend the lot line of the previously approved 2019 subdivision plan of the property, and site plan review will also be required in order to construct a 102-bed nursing care facility and associated site improvements, including parking areas, 2 curb cuts, stormwater management facilities, and courtyard areas and path systems intended for the enjoyment of the residents. This is in the rural zone and within the village expansion growth area as part of our 2014 comprehensive plan, and it is identified as tax map 1 lot 50 on our assessor's maps. There's also a map on the screen for those viewing either in person or online. This is a conceptual plan and the overview of the property that was submitted alongside the pre-application materials. The applicants will be providing sort of a further in-depth overview, so I will just bring up some of the core project data. This is sort of a summary of what is allowed in our current zoning ordinance for the rural zone and what is proposed by the applicants at this point. Again, this is simply a conceptual plan review, so things are sort of subject to change from here, but the applicants want to provide the planning board with an overview of their project this evening. I did flag a couple of key considerations in my memo that I sent around, and that has also been posted on the town's website. One of the first considerations that I have previously conveyed to the applicants through their consultant was that related to parking. So section 102.6H1 provides that parking areas shall be safe, convenient, and efficient access for vehicles and pedestrians. The object is to provide neither more nor less parking spaces than needed, and to maintain the village scale streetscape by not setting larger retail buildings further back from the street than necessary. Obviously, this building is not a retail building, it's a commercial building. So that sort of piece of the standard is not applicable here. However, the general overview is one of the site plan review requirements for providing safe, convenient, and efficient access. The applicants are required to provide at least 34 parking spaces per our land use code, and they are proposing 119 spaces at this time. Section 102.6H2 of our ordinance also notes that for properties over a half an acre, the minimum parking requirements may actually be reduced for good reason, such as for reducing stormwater runoff by the planning board. So I just wanted to flag that this evening, noting that the applicants are proposing sort of significantly more parking than is required in our ordinance. Additionally, for the placement of the parking, I have previously conveyed that the parking area that's located currently between the front facade of the building and the primary street, Piper Mill Road, will need to either be moved back so it's not placed between the building and the road per this section, or it needs to be screened by appropriate landscaping. And that would be a waiver of our existing standard that would need to be demonstrated by the applicants. Again, staff recommended just simply removing that. I think it was somewhere in the realm of 10 spaces, maybe a little more, about 15 spaces that's currently situated between the front of the building and the road. And then otherwise, if the applicant wants to keep those spaces, they'll need to show via submitted landscaping plan that the parking areas are screened from Piper Mill Road sufficiently. As far as stormwater management goes, there are currently a variety of stormwater detention ponds scattered throughout the site, as you saw in the concept plan. Our land use code does ask for low impact development techniques, but provides that if retention or detention ponds are necessary, because no other practical alternative exists, the pond or basin structure shall not be located within the required setback or buffer yard of the property. Staff would also recommend a peer review of any stormwater management plans by either the Knox-Lincoln Soil and Water District or another qualified peer reviewing engineer at the applicant's expense in accordance with the reference section. And then finally, I just wanted to flag for the board that this project, as it is more than 20,000 square feet, will be subject to large scale development standards in our zoning ordinance. And as part of those, large scale developments are typically required to put in sidewalks, both within the development and along any public streets. There are currently no sidewalks in the vicinity of the proposed development, either along Piper Mill Road or School Street. However, the construction of sidewalks along School Street was identified as a priority in the 2015 joint bike ped plan with Newcastle. And so the board should just consider if that is a priority in this case, where no sidewalks currently exist. And to my knowledge, I will note that we don't currently have funding in place for a connecting sidewalk on School Street. So that would be considered a waiver of this standard, but the board may find that to be appropriate in this case. I also just wanted to note that sort of the next step in this process would be a site visit of the property. That's required for large scale developments and for all subdivision applications. And even though this is just a lot line change, this would be considered a minor subdivision. So sort of the next step after this meeting would be to schedule a site visit of the property. That would need to be duly noticed. So my recommendation would be to sort of delegate that responsibility to staff to coordinate schedules and send the notices out. I think that's all for me. Sorry if that was a little long-winded. I will turn it back to the board, and maybe they want to turn to the applicants now.
Thank you, Isabel. I didn't think it was too long, quite honestly.
Okay.
In a proponent of short meetings, but having said that, let's move on. Any comments before we go to the applicant, or I think we're all set. We'll do it later, but technically Dan is a member tonight. We didn't do
Vote
that.
me in right now, if you want.
I'll make a motion if we move Dan Day up from alternate status to a voting member.
A second.
And those in favor? Done. Okay. So the applicant has the floor at this point.
My name is Daniel McGuire, and I'm the managing partner at Sandy River Company. And Sandy River Company's been developing senior care facilities throughout the state of Maine for roughly 40 years. We started in Farmington, Maine. And I have two other partners, one up in Camden, Michael Tyler, another one that lives in Boulder, Colorado, David Friedman. Neither one of them can be here tonight. I have with me Doug Gardner, who is the Senior Vice President of Development and Operations for North Country Associates. And just to understand a little bit how we're organized, Sandy River is the development partner in a joint venture with North Country Associates. North Country operates roughly about 25 buildings, and I'll explain that, but just wanted to be clear who we are, the joint venture between two different companies that are coming together. And we've done this a number of times. So.
Yes, good evening. As Daniel said, my name is Doug Gardner. I work for North Country. Sorry, the title is a little obnoxious in terms of brevity. But as Daniel said, we are partners in this project as well as a handful of other new buildings. We've been owned by the same gentleman since 1981 when the company was founded. We own or manage 25 long-term care campuses between Maine and one down in Massachusetts. We have about 1,500 beds in total in the state of Maine and roughly 2,000 or so employees. Our services range anywhere from assisted living to memory care to skilled nursing, adult day health programs. We also own or manage 3 long-term care facilities for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we're incredibly excited to be part of this project as well as some of the other partnerships that we have with Sandy River.
Great, thank you, Doug. Takes a team to create one of these projects, and it takes a lot of community support to make it actually happen. We brought along a few members of our team, and I'm going to introduce them real quickly. Rebecca Dillon is with Gowan Turgeon Architects. They're in Scarborough, and they have designed a number of projects with us. So we're excited to have them on board for this one as well. Andy Johnston, who is raising his hand there, is with Atlantic Resources Consultants. They're doing the site planning and site engineering for the project. Both of them will speak in a few minutes when we get into the details of the project a little bit more. Blaine Buck is sitting right here. Blaine is with Cordier out of Camden. Cordiers are right-hand man is the way I look at it, but the owner's representative on the project during construction. And a project manager, so he's a big part of our team. I also want to say that this project isn't just happening because of us, because the two of us. We're invited to begin looking at senior care services in Damascotta by Lincoln Health. And as you probably know, Lincoln Health operates Cove's Edge, which is a nursing home on their campus. They also operate a small nursing care unit at St. Andrews Village in Bar Harbor, Booth Bay Harbor. I thought I'd get that one right. So I just wanted to say that. And with us, Cindy Wade is here tonight. And I think everybody might know Cindy. So we've been working very closely with her on this project, collaborating on how we do it, how we design it, and so forth. Brooks Betts, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Lincoln Health, is also here with us tonight. So what do we do? I started in this business in 1984, and I was probably 28, 29. I'm now cruising through my 70s and getting closer to my 60s and getting closer to 70 every day. And now designing these places and developing them for me and what I like and don't like. So back when I was 28, 29 years old, my partner David said, we're going to do nursing homes. And I went, I know nothing about nursing homes. And I started to go in and tour them. And the first thing I realized was I don't like nursing homes and I don't want to be in one, and period. And the reason why I didn't like them was because I saw 2 people in a room 3 feet apart in a bed that sometimes were strangers with each other. I couldn't understand that. Sometimes there were 4 people in a room. I've even toured facilities in this country where there's 8-bed wards and they still exist in this country. So I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that I would be sharing a bathroom with as many as 2 or 4 people. It just didn't make sense. So that was an issue. The other thing I noticed is that in most facilities, there was a central dining room where everybody came together. 3 or 4 wings that were going out with these long dead end, corridors. There was nothing home-like about it that I saw. So we've spent 40 years really trying to turn it upside down. I always say we're ungluing the old style nursing homes that were built throughout the country in 1970 and 1980. And you can see them when I fly in an airplane anywhere. I'm always looking down trying to find the next nursing home. And they're scattered around the United States in all the small towns and cities, but they all look alike. And largely they were built pretty much the same era and the same time. So we really have worked hard trying to do a couple things. One, as everybody knows, the pandemic was not friendly to nursing homes at all. When it's the most vulnerable population we have in this country. So when the pandemic started and began, the first place it went to was inside nursing homes. And you read the stories and the horror stories. And within 6 months, roughly around 30% of every death that was going on in this country was happening inside a nursing home. So it was staggering. And what it did was wake up people to the fact that nursing homes don't work the way they're designed. They're not particularly effective dealing with infectious diseases. It's just not a good situation. So we have been working really, really hard. And everybody that knows me knows I love to dive into this issue, is that we need private rooms. I don't want to share a room with somebody. We need the option of where everybody can have a private room. In the state, and as well as the federal government has finally woken up to that fact, and is now allowing us to develop nursing homes that have mostly private rooms. The downside of that, as everybody can imagine, is the cost goes up. So as soon as you say, oh, let's give everybody a private room, the building gets much bigger. And the cost goes up and makes it, a little bit less affordable. So that's an issue that you have to wrestle with. I'm happy to say that we're doing the state's first all private bed nursing home in Rockland. It's under construction. It's 96 beds. And we fully intend in this community to develop a 102 bed facility that is also all private bedrooms. So it'll be very unique and extremely valuable asset to any community that we're trying to make that happen in. I thought it would make sense to show some of our work. I'm not sure how we'll do this, but Blaine, you can help me. And recently we've, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've developed a number of assisted living memory care facilities in Wells, in Brunswick, in Westbrook. We've done a nursing home with Maine Health in Sanford, which just opened up about a year ago. We've got one in Rockland that's under construction. So to give you some idea of what we're contemplating, and you saw can we take that floor plan and, footprint and just put it down here so at least the planning board can see it. So what we've done on our buildings is to create 3 or 4 neighborhoods in a building. And we do that to decentralize the dining and the living spaces, to create courtyards in each of the 3 neighborhoods, which is here, here, and here. In this particular facility, in this community, we'd be doing 3 neighborhoods of 34 people. They would each have their own special niche, if you will. One would be long-term care. One would be skilled care, where people are going into the hospital with some sort of acute event and need rehab and would come out. So we have 1 skilled care unit. The third one, I think, is still going to be long-term care, memory care, long-term care. So it's going to be licensed nursing memory care, not to be confused with licensed assisted living memory care, which is a lighter level of care, but still for people with memory loss issues. So that's a little bit about that. Our buildings, rather than go up and make them institutional looking at all, we're really focused on trying to make them 1-story buildings. This happens to be up in Rockland, a rendering of the building. And as you can see, we're trying to basically connect or interconnect 3 different neighborhoods and make them feel like homes as much as you possibly can. with residential grade roofing, windows, siding, and so forth. So it looks as much as you can possibly make a nursing home look to feel like home. Inside the building as well as outside the building. Blaine, let's show a little bit of the inside of buildings we're working on. This is the entranceway in Sanford, which is a nursing care center we just opened up. It is the front lobby, if you will, and the reception area is off to this side, but it gives you a really good feel of the grade of construction that we're looking at. And again, trying to make it feel like home, feel coastal in this particular instance, with fireplaces and furniture that just is comfortable, someplace you'd be fine sitting down and grabbing a book and wanting to just hang out. So that's the feeling that we're planning on here and we really aspire to in all of our buildings. This is the dining room. I never can remember exactly where each photograph is, but I think this is Summer Commons down in
Yes.
Sanford as well. So it gives you an idea of the dining area spaces.
And Daniel, that's to one of your points in terms of a
Yeah.
large communal dining area. This space here, in this case, serves 30 residents. So it's not a large dining hall, so to speak. Each neighborhood has its own dining area
Thank you.
and living area.
This is a living room also in Summer Commons down in Sanford. Again, it just feels good. You know, I don't mind hanging out there. Every time I go there, I want to sit down in a chair and stop all the work I'm doing and just hang out and rest and relax for a bit. So it's the feeling that we're trying to create. I'll let you speak to the people.
So this is another unique aspect of the design, which are there will be a country kitchen in each of the neighborhoods. And all of the meals come out and are prepped in a commercial kitchen. They come to the individual neighborhood country kitchens and get plated in those environments. So all of the dishware, all of the dishes are done. It's really kind of a family style dining experience. And we're also doing quite a bit of cook to order items. It just really enhances that dining experience where you're not getting a tray set down in front of you.
This is a, I'll let you speak to this as well. You
This is
understand this more than I do.
each of the neighborhoods have 2 nurses stationed. So this is at the end of each of the halls. So there's a nurses station for every either 14 or 16 patients in the building. So it really creates some efficiencies around staffing, and it's all state of the art, from access control, being able to buzz folks in terms of security, electronic health record. You'll see that there's a kiosk mounted on the wall. That's where all the charting happens, and just what you would expect at a nurse's station. And a finished bedroom at Summer Commons just gives you a sense of the size, the scale of the room, as well as the finishes. You know, you can tell it's a nursing home, it's a hospital bed, it's a fully electric hospital bed, but it doesn't present that way. Bed spread could probably be a little bit better. Another unique component of the design are a European shower model where there's no threshold, there's no actual like fiberglass shower unit. So you're able to go in, the floors are heated as well. It's just a really nice, it's nice for residents and patients as well as for staff providing care.
This is one of the 3 courtyards that we create, and it's still pretty new in this project, so it's not fully grown in, but we really care about landscaping. I think you'd be quite impressed with the amount of landscaping that we're planning for the project here, which, by the way, I haven't said it yet, is going to be named Clippership Landing is the name of the facility. We think makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I think what we'd like to do is do 2 things. One, I'd like our architect to speak a little bit about our design and floor plan and take a few minutes to do that. And then we'll have Andy Johnston, who did the site work and engineering, dive into that, which is really the the crux of this meeting is to get into the site plan review and sketch plan review. So let's. Hello, Rebecca, hiding behind my.
Do you need me to take the microphone?
I can get up if you want her to sit.
Move it over on that end, tip it up. and it should be fine.
Good evening, Rebecca Dillon from Gorin Turgeon Architects. We're in Scarborough, Maine, so not too far away. And as Daniel mentioned, we've been working together for a very long time on projects. We've learned a lot working together, and also with Doug's input on what works for staffing, what works for residents and their families. So our goal is to always create a nice, welcoming building. Being in a nursing home is not something that can always be, you're there for a reason because you have physical disabilities where you need to be taken care of, memory loss, different types of things that happen as we get older. And I've recently gone through it with both of my parents, so I understand a lot more of the process. And being able to go to a nice building that looks, it's a large building, but still resembles a home. It has home elements, a front porch here with some nice rocking chairs out front, nice residential materials, shingles, clapboards, and double hung windows, things that you would normally see in a house in Maine. So we try to keep things as familiar as possible. And just to touch a little bit on the parking in the front, a lot of visitors to nursing homes are older people as well. So being able to arrive at a building, knowing where the front door is, making that very visible, and knowing where they can easily park and walk to the front door. So you can't have people parking so far away that it's hard for them to even get to the front door to go in and see their spouse or their aunt. So we do try to locate the parking, even though it is trying to balance with the ordinance, so that it makes it easier on family coming there. And so we have a nice front porch. You come in and there's a beautiful sitting area that was one of the images that you saw, and a reception space and some offices. And over to the right is the physical therapy gym. And I know this plan is not in the packet that you received, but we got it to the point where we could bring it tonight. So we thought we would and give you an overview of it. And as Daniel mentioned, this is the core of the building. This is where we have the commercial kitchen, the commercial laundry, the mechanical room. I mentioned the offices. There's a large conference room for training and staff to meet. And then we have our 3 neighborhoods. And you can see by the colors what Daniel was referring to, where we have in green our resident rooms that are along the sides and ends of the wings, so that all of the residents have a nice view outdoors, whether it's to the beautiful landscaping in the front of the building or the secured courtyards that we have and these other central courtyards. Every room really is going to be able to look out and see some plantings. They'll get natural light, which is very important. When it's important to all of us, but as you get older, it's even more important. And we have support spaces in each of the wings of the neighborhoods, the nurses area, storage, the essentials that need to be there for a nursing home to function. And then in the middle is where we have that dining space for this neighborhood, 2 smaller living areas where residents can come out and sit with each other. They can come out and sit with family members that are visiting. They can sit with staff. And then the country kitchens, as Doug mentioned, they're not being given their meals on trays. The food is prepared in this commercial kitchen, brought out to the country kitchen, and then the final preparation happens there. What people in the nursing home business have learned over the years is that as you age, you lose your appetite. And being able to have a kitchen open to the living space, you can smell your food being prepared, and that actually will stimulate the appetite, and it makes the resident healthier and more likely to eat the meals that are prepared for them. And that basic layout is the same for each of these, all three of these neighborhoods. Again, you can see the kitchens are in a little bit of a different location based on their proximity to where they are in the connection to the core. And then we also have a couple of common spaces for residents. There's a spa where they can go and have some treatment done. And then there's also a salon where they can go get their haircuts and not have to leave the building to have that done, or have someone come to their room. And in this neighborhood here, which is neighborhood C, this will be the memory care neighborhood. And we will have a secured garden out here, which will have beautiful landscaping and these nice walking paths. And that allows residents with memory care to go out there and be able to move around. And I don't know if you're familiar with folks with different types of memory loss, but movement and walking is very important, and getting them outside to do that is very important to their health. So we pay a lot of special attention to that garden. And this over here is the service area entrance. You can see that in the site plan that you were provided. And we have some nice screening in here between the resident rooms and that area, and also some nice screening between the parking area and the service area, so you're not seeing what's happening going on there. But that's basically the overview of the floor plan and the building. And I will let Andy come up next, but willing to answer any questions afterwards. This is the bird's eye view that you have in your packet of this project, with parking out front that we talked about and the nice porch. And this is, we're alluding here to the screening that we're going to provide, separating the service area from the parking. And then we're studying screening here to also create a buffer between the resident rooms that are over here. And we have a fire lane that goes around probably 3/4 of the building. And I can let Andy talk more about that, since he's met with the fire chief and gone over those details with him. And with that, thank you.
Did any of the board members have a question or comment or at this time? Thank you.
Good evening. Andy Johnston with Atlantic Resource Consultants. We did the site work and we're assisting with both the engineering and the permitting on the site civil side. So I'm just going to take a few moments to walk through the site, how we ended up with the configuration and the orientation that we have right now. And a lot of this will become a little more clear, hopefully, when you do the site walk, because the first thing we do when we look at a site like this is we do an analysis of the existing conditions on the site. If anyone's familiar with the site already, it comes off Piper Mill Road to the north. There's kind of a large grassy area in here right now. You can walk, it's woods, but it's not so dense that you can't walk through them. The high point of the site is actually right in this area here, where there's a little knob, elevated knob here at about elevation 84. And then it falls away to the west to a stream that runs through the meadow down on the west side of the site. It also falls away to the east and to the southeast to fingers of wetlands that run down the site. That's what's shown in green. They have little stream segments at the bottom of them. that run into this open water wetland towards the northeast of the site. So what we do is we look at all that, we combine the topography with the natural resources, and these are all mapped. They were mapped for a previous development, and then we updated the mapping last year. And actually walked the site with DEP staff to confirm the mapping and to confirm the characterization of these wetlands. And so we look at the wetlands, the characterization and the setbacks. We try to minimize the impact of the topography by placing the building in the right place. So we're minimizing the cuts and fills and minimizing the disturbance associated with the site. And we land the building in roughly this area, which is it's near the highest point and it's near the flattest point in the site. And I'll say that will become a little more apparent when we do the site walk. We also looked at a number of different orientations of the building. And that has quite a big impact on the cuts and fills around the perimeter of the site as you start rotating the building. This actually ended up being both the most efficient orientation of the building from a cut and fill perspective, but it also gives us a number of other advantages to the site. Rebecca explained already the advantage of having a very clear entrance sequence. So people in these environments are sometimes older, they're often distracted. It's very important to give people a clear line of sight to the entrance of the building and make people very familiar with where they're going and make the parking and the access to the building as convenient as possible. The other big advantage with this orientation is we have the entrance facing south and west, which everybody who's been through a Maine winter will know. But to try and keep a building entrance away from those cold northerly winds, the northeasterly winds, is a real benefit. It also minimizes potential for frost impact in that area of the building. It tends to be less shade, it tends to be a much better orientation from a site perspective. So from there, placing the building on the site in the most efficient place, placing that entrance sequence, it leaves us with the parking field kind of front and center in the building, front and center on the site, between the building and the street. What we've done here is we've left enough room and we're hoping to retain enough of the larger pines and the existing vegetation to provide a really substantial buffer between Piper Mill Road and the parking area. To Isabel's point, these parking spaces that are just between the facade of the building and the street, they're the ones that we will want to landscape a little more and maybe provide some enhanced low-level buffering here just to fill in some of the spaces. But we do feel, and this is based on the experience of these folks running these facilities, is that this parking lot is right-sized. They've done a number of studies on existing facilities, and the parking counts that are required for them fall in that approximately one space per bed to cover staff parking at overlap times, and visitor parking. And of course, on a site like this, if we were in a different location, there was potential for, say, your parking lot got too full and people could park on a property opposite or down the street. That's not the case here. We don't want to be in a situation where the parking lot, there's more cars than there are parking spaces. People have to park down Piper Mill Road, because as you'll know from being up Piper Mill Road, it's not a wide street. So we don't want to get into that situation. We feel this is right sized for the development. And I say we can provide some backup data for that based on existing facilities. Again, just going through the site sequence, the entrance, we've oriented the entrance right towards the front of the building. It's almost exactly opposite where the apartment entrance is, which again is a bit of an advantage from a traffic perspective, makes things a little less confusing. That's the primary entrance. We then have a secondary entrance that comes in and serves a service area, because we don't want all those service vehicles coming in and out and through the parking lot. So that's just minimizing potential impacts between pedestrian and different types of vehicular traffic. So we're just trying to separate the traffic streams there. And that service area, I say you can come in and out separately. There's a small garage storage building shown opposite the service entrance. And this is the hub of where all the utilities come into the site. So there is water in Piper Mill Road that will come up into the site. There you will see the new poles that are going in along Piper Mill Road. That's primarily to take the existing three-phase, which is underground, that goes up to the Great Salt Bay Sanitary District. It's actually going to put that overhead because they've had problems with their underground power. So we will be taking three-phase power off the pole, which will be located right next to the entrance there. Water, as I said, will connect to the street. And then sewer, we're thinking, is going to come down to a pump station at the end of the property here and then pump up towards the plant. The final details of that we're working through with Great Salt Bay Sanitary District. We do have a letter from them saying they can serve us for both water and sewer. But I say there's still a few details to work out on that front. From a stormwater perspective, and Isabel mentioned a little bit, the desire to go with low impact development stormwater best management practices. And just to clarify that, what we're showing on this plan, none of these are plain detention basins. So these are the ones that are shaded in brown, if you can distinguish. There's 5 or 6 of them. Are actually bioretention cells or rain gardens. They're a foot deep. They're heavily planted. They're designed to be integrated into the landscaping of the facility. So they don't really look like stormwater ponds. They're like shallow depressions that have plantings and shrubs and some flowering plants as well in these. The 2 or 3 larger ones are under drained sand filters, under drained soil filters. They're a grass mix that goes in them rather than shrubs and plants. But again, they're only 1.5 feet deep. So they're not big, deep detention basins that are going to be full of water or see water coming and going. You'll barely ever see water in these, and it'll just look like a vegetated depression. To enhance that treatment, we also have drip edges, stone drip edges, filtering drip edges around all the edges of the building. This is a primarily pitched roof building, all except for the central core here. So all of the roof areas will be treated in filtering drip edges. So I think we have a total of 22 or 23 different best management practices. We're trying to divide this up as much as we can into little small treatment areas and make them look good and integrate them into the landscaping of the project. As I said, we understand from Isabel's memo and her comment, there may be a desire from the planning board to have the stormwater calculations reviewed by a peer review, third-party peer review. And you absolutely have the scope to ask for that. I do want to inform the board that this plan is large enough that it's actually going through Site Location and Development Act at Maine DEP. So with the stormwater, along with just about every other facet of this development, will be reviewed by the DEP engineers as well. That process usually takes 4 or 5 months, but it goes into, in addition to stormwater, obviously into groundwater, solid waste disposal, and all those other aspects of development. One other feature just to touch on here is the fire lane. And it is common to have a fire lane, and sometimes they go all the way around the building, but there's a reason why we're not going all the way around the building in this one. And Isabel was good enough to set up a meeting between us and Chief Roberts to discuss this very item. And that resulted in us just elongating these 2 legs just a little bit. So he's got enough room to park his aerial ladder truck at the end of each of these and revolve the ladder to get down these far faces of the building. The reason we didn't go all the way around is because of this large wetland complex here. And by putting a wall in here, we minimize the impact of that wetland area. We cut it way back to here. So you can imagine if we had brought that road all the way around, we would probably have a wall out here. We'd be adding 7,000 or 8,000 square feet of wetland impact, which we don't think is necessary. And based on the fire chief's initial review, he doesn't think it's necessary. So we'd obviously rather not do that. And we want to keep the impacts to natural resources as minimal as we possibly can. So that's an overview of the site and how we ended up where we were. The only other thing that I'll make reference to that was in the packets is just some of the sketches of the courtyard areas. And Rebecca touched on that a little bit. But all we're intending to show there is those designs are still coming together a little bit. There's a lot of thought that goes into them as to how they work, how they benefit the residents and the folks in the building. So it's just kind of an ongoing process. So you'll see a little more detail as the design progresses on that, but it hasn't got that far, frankly, right now. So that's the site plan.
Just wanted to say one thing, as we wrap around here, you'll see an access or entrance point to the remaining land. We're asking to subdivide or separate the extra land away from the nursing home to be developed for future housing or related use for what we're doing. We just think it's a valuable piece of private property, not a lot of land left to develop in the community. So we really want to make sure we treat it properly and figure out what we want to do with it that makes sense for the community. I think that's it. I think we're open to questions and comments.
Do we have any questions or? I am still, numbers are up here, but you got 102 beds, 102 parking places. Well, maybe Christmas, people come by.
So
Got
the
it.
fact that the building is all private homes is great. It creates a building that is much more staff intense than a traditional double loaded corridor nursing home. So we will have a need Monday through Friday for 90 spaces at GE shift on the day shift.
Wow, that
So
surprises me. That's all.
the day shift Monday through Friday, there'll be 55 employees on the day shift and roughly 35 employees on the evening.
Roughly 200 employees in all.
No, I hear that's, thank you for that. I didn't know. That was in my head.
The design is great, but we probably have to staff it 15 to 20% heavier than a traditional long care. So just given the layout and the geography, this is 3.8.
I won't ask the question where you're gonna get the help, but I didn't ask that question. Jim, do you have a comment or question?
Chairman, are you accepting comments from the public?
That would be, yeah, this is an open meeting and it would be appropriate for you to comment. Yes.
I might have to see. Excuse me, Jim.
The downside of only one extra microphone.
I usually speak loud enough so everybody can hear me anyway, with or without that. Good evening. Some of you don't know me. I know virtually everybody on this board, I think. My name is Jim Gallagher. I'm an attorney here in Damascotta. I've been a Damascotta resident for 72 years. 45 of those as practicing attorney, mainly in real estate and probate. For the record, my firm has represented the town of Damascotta on a number of matters over the course of that 45 years. And I'm speaking for myself this evening, however, as a resident. And I'm here at great risk, great personal risk, because this is my 52nd wedding anniversary. And my wife, God bless her, has allowed me to do this. But I know I'm going to pay for it at some point in the future. I'm also certain that most of you members of the planning board, that there are some areas that you cannot control. These include the certificates of necessity and other things that are based on the state and federal requirements. The project looks wonderful. The problem I have with it is the effect it's going to have on the residents of the town of Damascotta. You can't judge the wisdom of Maine Health, and it's another thing you can't do. In closing St. Andrew's facility, even though thereby you're requiring the friends and family of the residents to drive to Damascotta to see their loved ones, that's a choice that Maine Health made for you and not for them. Many of whom, these older people, are elderly themselves and probably can't drive themselves to Damascotta for that visit. I suppose you could say that it's better us than them. That is, at least Damascotta residents won't have to drive to Boothbay to make those visits. So much for Lincoln Health and Maine Health and their concern for the community. What you can do, however, is exercise your discretion and judgment on matters concerning the safety of the citizens of Damascotta, who you represent. It already takes me 5 minutes to get out of my driveway at the corner of Bristol Road and School Street. Sometimes that is true in the summer. In the winter, it might be a few minutes shorter than that. I've seen School Street at Bristol Road backed up as far as the Peterson property, which used to be known as Cedar Lodge. Those of you who've been around a while know Cedar Lodge. Same holds true for the junction of School Street and Business Route 1, where traffic is often backed up to Gus Knott's property. The High Street intersection presents a double problem. School Street and its intersection with Bristol Road, with some of the line of sight southward is very limited. And almost no one on Bristol Road does 35 miles an hour, which is the posted speed limit. You can witness the braking in tire marks south of the hospital entrance just to establish that there have been an awful lot of close calls there. This facility is wonderful, but I don't believe the location of it is a proper place for a 102-bed facility where staff will clog the intersections at least twice every day, 7 days a week, with impossible traffic jams in summer and slipping and sliding in the winter. One other final point, to get a proper review of this application and this pre-application, the applicant has had to provide you with proof of right title and interest in the property. You've posted a copy of the contract online. The contract calls for, and this is right out of the contract that's online, it calls for Clipper Landing Development LLC as seller to sell to Orestes and Crowley certain property. However, this is an error because Orestes and Crowley acquired the property June 29th, 2022. So the contract you're looking at is defective. And somebody at Bernstein Shore or wherever this was drafted made a gross error. They signed in the right places, but the contract has the Clipper entity selling the property, which it doesn't own. Yeah, I know it's a technicality, but lawyers deal with technicalities, and the application that's before you, the pre-application, is defective. And I would suggest that you let the people come back, do the thing the right way, and then come back and talk to you again. That's all I have to say at this point.
Thank you, Jim. We have another person in the audience that would like to speak.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Claire Summer. My name is Claire Summer, and I am the major abutting property owner on the Kastner Brook West boundary. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here at this open meeting and to ask a couple of questions. Is it okay if I ask questions as well as make comments?
Certainly.
Okay. So I'm curious about what the distance is in feet of what looks like the fire lane on the west boundary relative to the Kastner Brook buffer area, which is, as I'm understanding it, Kastner Brook is a tributary that's marked in a sort of a pink dotted line. And I believe the green sort of indicates its associated wetland. I'm very curious about what that little pink rectangle is. I don't understand. Is there a simple answer to what the pink?
It's a garage.
It's a garage. Okay, great. Thank you. So I have questions about what the distance is in feet from the garage to Kastner Brook in feet. I'd appreciate that information. I'd appreciate information about the plan for preservation of mature trees and natural features, primarily on the western boundary. I'm very curious and a little concerned about the plan for maintaining the peaceful rural nature of our neighborhood, specifically relating to a massive increase in traffic on Piper Mill Road and School Street. And one of our speakers and presenters mentioned that people coming to this beautiful facility might in fact be distracted. That word came up and that really sort of made me start. So now we're going to have distracted people speeding and driving much too quickly on School Street, which is already a problem. An ancillary issue to the increased traffic flow is how are we going to ensure the safety of the children who play on Piper Mill Road? If you spent any time walking the lovely road down to the sanitary district, you'll know that children are always spilling out into Piper Mill Road. I'm curious, I couldn't see, can someone point me where the service entrance is on the plot?
Oops, sorry.
So this is the service entrance road and the service entrance comes in here.
Thank you very much. So we were shown a building floor plan, and I'm wondering whether the orientation of that plan is the same north-south orientation as this landscape plot. Okay, thank you. The fire lane, could you please point that out for me?
There are two fire lanes. This one wraps around and as mentioned by a little while ago, terminates here.
Yeah.
Then might impact our wetlands and then also comes this way and stop. So
Thank you. Andrew? I think I might have met you when you did one of the initial sidewalks. It was a very squishy, muddy mud season day. And my request is, as a member of the public, is it possible for me as a citizen to go on the sidewalk?
They're all open meetings.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like assurance that Kastner Brook will not be fouled by stormwater runoff and medical waste. What are the sort of, plans and conditions to make sure that we don't have anything fouling Kastner Brook? Because Kastner Brook doesn't stay in Kastner Brook. I'm particularly concerned about light pollution. What is the plan with these, this very large fire lane that can accommodate a fire engine, which is eminently necessary? What are the plans for light pollution to not disturb the nature of the neighborhood? Related to that, I'm one neighbor, but the other neighbors in this plot are all of the animals that call it home, including a pair of very healthy coyote who I saw from my back deck walking just on my side of the property of Kastner Brook 2 nights ago. Could you point out on the plot here where the additional subdivision is that you mentioned?
So I don't know if you can see where my cursor is.
No.
Nope.
Drop this down a little bit.
Yeah.
It would be all the land, this red line right here, would be all the land on that side.
To the east.
And these-
Thank you. And that was all my questions. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you. You're always invited to our public meetings.
Thank you.
There were several questions. I assume you've got a,
Yep. Can I just provide a brief comment first? We do appreciate the questions from both you and other members of the public who have sent me some emails. At this point, this is just a pre-application. So basically everything we've received is what was included in the packet that was posted online. The site plan review standards do require submittal of a lot of the information that you were requesting, especially in regards to stormwater runoff and light pollution. And so I'm sure the applicants are currently working on that and will be submitted during the full site plan application where we'll actually be able to provide highly detailed answers to that. Yep.
Could I just answer a couple of those questions just very briefly or give give some of the answers to
Yes,
them.
you're welcome.
So first off, on the traffic, we have already engaged the traffic engineer because we understood from town staff that that would be one of the concerns. And actually particularly related to the intersection at School Street and Business Route 1, which has been identified as a high crash location. So our traffic engineer is Bill Bray, who's one of the most experienced traffic engineers in the state. He's also already spoken to the Region 2 traffic engineer from DOT, Dave Allen. So we're aware of what plans DOT have on the cards for that intersection. But also he's started developing some trip generation numbers and a traffic assessment report, which will of course be issued with our application. And just as a brief explanation of traffic and how traffic works with these facilities, they're actually pretty low traffic generators. And you'll see that when the report comes out, the actual figures for peak hour traffic are fairly low for facilities like this. But I say we'll provide a whole lot more detail when the time comes. I say we've done our due diligence in contacting DOT and looking at some of those issues already. The other two questions that I can answer, the distance from the garage to the brook is 100 feet. There's a 75-foot regulatory setback, which we're honoring to the brook, but also it's common under Site Location Development Act, even though it's not in the regulations, for DEP to ask for a 100-foot setback from the stream, which is a little more than what is required. So we're maintaining that 100-foot setback for the garage. We will, of course, be treating all the stormwater runoff that comes off the site to state standards, as well as to a local ordinance, which I gather is somewhat different than require a 50-year storm, as well as the 2, 10, and 25. But we'll be meeting all the water quality standards. As far as the medical waste, I think is a completely different issue. That doesn't come out of the building. That gets disposed of in an entirely different manner. None of that comes out of the building or exposed outside in any way. And just generally on preservation of the landscape, as we'll see on the sidewalk, there's some great trees around this facility, and they really benefit the development. The views from the rooms and the views from the building really require us to maintain as much of that vegetation as we can, if nothing else for the benefit of the residents, but also to preserve the buffering around the edges of the property. So we'll be, and that's what I was explaining about orienting and positioning the building in the most efficient way we can to try and minimize the disturbed envelope, if you like, around the site, just to try and maintain as much of that as we can. There will be no lighting around the fire lanes. So there will be lighting in the parking lot. It'll all be full cutoff, LED, very efficient, and very high, very sharp cutoffs at the back of the lighting. It'll all be designed in accordance with your standards, but also what are now just standard engineering practice, which is all full cutoff lighting, but no lighting around the fire lane. That's what I have for easy answers for now. So there'll be a lot more information coming later.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it. It was well done. Do we have questions?
I've heard already on meeting one of potentially maybe with some waivers, and I just want to remind the applicant that we were going to require a plan in front of us that meets all of our ordinances as they are written, and then we deal with waivers after that. So this happened on our last large scale development where they were altered before they even came to us, and we now are asking for a full compliance with our ordinance at first, and we'll deal with those on the after end, just so that we don't have to deal with that in another fashion like we did before.
Comment, good comment. Other comments or questions from the board? Do we appear to be in order, Isabel, or?
If nobody has any questions, you could move forward.
That's my sense. If nobody, and we will work on all of your questions, plus Jim's and anyone else who has texted or emailed us, with questions. So at this point, our next step is to, develop a site plan meeting and And then because your job is to tune this up for a presentation either next month or when you're ready, kind of thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So is that what, we'll leave it in your good hands to,
Yeah, I would suggest making a motion to that effect, but you can delegate scheduling to staff.
I'll make a motion that we have Isabel work with the applicant and schedule a site visit plan that is in coordinates with advertising it in a timely manner and to put some dates out there for both the applicants and the planning board members to review.
and that requires a second.
I'll second it.
We have a second to that motion, all in favor? And that's unanimous. So I think in terms of that aspect, we do appreciate you coming and appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
So it was a very muddy, muddy.
So in a nutshell, we have no minutes to review. We've taken up the agenda items. Are we, is that it or other things?
Can I do another presentation?
Oh, you warned us that you might.
I'm sorry. I'll keep this one very brief. I'll just let everyone.
Sure.
I'm gonna go out, so the 100 feet, just so that from my, because I can't.
Claire?
So you're gonna schedule the site visit? Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to make everyone aware that I've been working on some process improvements since I've started. And I put together a brief presentation about why this is so important. So just to recap the role of the planning board, obviously the role of the board when you're making decisions on site plans or subdivisions is sort of a quasi judicial decision-making process. That's used when, again, you make decisions on pending applications. And I sort of wanted to say that as an aside, you also will typically use legislative decision-making, although only when you're actively making policy, like during amendments to the land use ordinance. Quasi-judicial decision-making requires the planning board to apply standards which are already in place within the ordinance. And then for standards that involve judgment, like being compatible or harmonious with the surrounding neighborhood, the board needs to use quality evidence like data, photographs, modeling, et cetera, to resolve any contested facts. And then, as we've sort of seen, public engagement needs to be centered around relevant evidence on whether or not the proposal meets the standards that are outlined in the ordinance. So I think frequently in planning board settings, we'll get public engagement such as, well, I don't like this project. And that's not helpful for the standards that are sort of provided to you within the zoning ordinance and all of our other relevant land use ordinances. So like I mentioned, public engagement needs to be centered around relevant evidence. And in order to make this better for both the public and the applicants and you all, I see my role as the planner as reviewing the applications against the standards, obviously, in order to provide you all with a solid recommendation. And as part of that initial review, I think that with me, you might see that the time that an application is submitted to when it gets to you all might end up being a little bit longer than it might previously have been, but it's going to be a higher quality application that hopefully will result in only one meeting with everyone. And so that's sort of the goal that I'd like to work towards, is that, and by one meeting, obviously, if multiple are required by the ordinance, we would do multiple, but for site plan reviews, typically only one meeting is required. And my role will sort of be to review the application, research or solicit from the applicants or peer reviewers any of the quality evidence that we talked about, to resolve any facts that might be contested or up in the air, and then to sort of administer the public engagement process. So send the legal ads to the newspaper, mail the notices to the abutters on your behalf, et cetera. And then obviously, as part of my professional credentials, I need to remain up to date on state laws and procedures which might impact new development or might impact the way that public meetings need to be run in order to advise this board better. We talked a little bit about the importance of the process. I am really heavy on process improvements because I think an inefficient process causes frustration for everyone involved, the planner, the planning board, the applicant, and members of the public. It contributes to a greater delay and expense in the construction project process. Applicants want a process that is sort of clear and transparent. They want sort of at least a roadmap to get to the point where they want to go. And I sort of see my role as being the tour guide of that roadmap. So again, inefficient processes don't really help a lot of the goals that we're trying to advance in the community, but efficient processes can build credibility, allow me more time to focus on policy priorities of the board, and obviously will attract investment and diversify our tax base. Okay, so that's all to say that I put together a flow chart, and this is really small, but it is also posted on our website as of now, sort of outlining our typical site plan review process. And I think what's going to be the most different for this board than what might have been done in the past is sort of how much upfront work I'm devoting to applications. So part of the ordinance describes this period of time when the planner will respond to the applicant with any and all items needed to consider the application to be complete. And my philosophy on that is, in order to provide good customer service to applicants, that involves all city staff making the applicant aware of any concerns that they might have with the application. And by city staff, I also mean like Great Salt Bay in this case, or any other sort of stakeholders within the community that the application may impact. And then if it's not complete, the applicant needs to revise their application, which I will send sort of a clear written checklist of what needs to be resubmitted or submitted for the first time. Some of that is just like the negotiation piece, trying to get the best project for the community. Some of that will be asking for more data from the applicant or more evidence to back up a standard or a claim. And then once the application is deemed complete, then the planning board will see it. Now, you all still have a role in technically voting to vote to make applications complete, but I will submit evidence for the record of what I found and what my recommendation is to help you get to that point.
Yeah, that's what we've always done, you know, we recognize it's complete and
Yeah.
then we do a separate,
Yeah.
you know, to pass it or approve it.
Right. And then I think this really is just sort of a like flow chart in writing of what you've typically done in the past. So I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here, but I just want you
Didn't
to
sound like it. to
be
this
aware
point.
of sort of my philosophy. And I am also, I view my role as a planner as also providing the applicant with advisory comments. So things that aren't specifically on our ordinance, but might make the application better. And you'll see all of that in my completeness letters that I'm sending to the applicant. So I'm failing to think of an example right now. I guess like adding bike racks or some, you know, something small like that or something large. And then just to give you an overview of what the completeness letter will look like. I think this is sort of quite similar to your checklist, but you won't be seeing an actual checklist anymore. There we go. You won't be seeing an actual checklist. What you'll see is sort of a letter to the applicant stating that this letter provides the town's determination that the application is complete or incomplete for further processing. and then describing the material needed, sort of the next steps, being really clear about that. And then people who might contribute to the review. And this public works might be the town manager for right now, where we are we don't have a road commissioner, but yeah, I think that's sort of the general overview. So you probably already saw in the packet that the memo looked a little bit different. A lot of that is just sort of the way that I prefer to work. But I also hope that this kind of provides a better overview of the process to get from point A to point B for applicants, and also allows the public to participate more effectively because they know exactly what's going on. And the flow charts for both subdivisions and site plan were all posted on the planning page on the website, as well as updated application checklists for the applicant's use. So just wanted to let you all know.
Well, certainly efficiency is excellent term. You use it over and over, and I'm very
Yeah.
pleased to hear that.
Appreciate all that.
Very pleased. And again, it's different, but it's the same. If you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they can speak for themselves, but knowing Jonathan as well as I do, I'm sure he feels the same way, but obviously people will speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, because it's good to, get up front and be open and tell it the way it is, and let's keep going.
Yep.
Well, that's great.
And then I did have one other just sort of item before we end the meeting. So the next regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board would be September 12th, because the 5th is Labor Day. I actually have had a planned vacation for the 12th.
Oh, wait a minute.
So
Can
I
you
was
talk about that?
wondering if the board may feel so inclined as to meet on the last Monday of this month, which would be the 29th, 5 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, rather than holding a September meeting.
I won't be here, but that doesn't matter.
I may not be either, but I have to look at my calendar when I get home, but
Okay.
I can do that.
I won't.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Oh, gee.
Oh, yes, it's about that
Fortunately for
time.
him, you're taking him. I mean, it's good that he went to school. I mean, there's no issue for me, but obviously we need a quorum.
Right,
Yep.
like I say, maybe an email to the group to figure out who's gonna be here to find out if we do have that quorum, and Otto is gonna be the.
Isabel, what was that date again?
The 29th of August.
So I guess we'll work at that. With the third Monday is not, I mean, it's late, that's for sure. But well, I don't know what's on the agenda. I mean, the agenda will be developed. And
Yeah, so the other option would be to do the 19th of September instead, which was fine as well.
Either one.
I will send an email to confirm
Yeah.
quorum.
He'll just respond.
Yeah.
We have to just draw straws.
And safe to assume that the comments made around the document of the sale, we'll dig into that a little further before we go too far with this, I assume.
Yep.
So just want to make sure.
Yep,
Okay, thanks for bearing with me. That's all from me.
super.
Thanks for all your work.
I think we can use that old motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it this time.
And those in favor? We're out of here. Great.